you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
It's a Sith legend.
Darth Plagueis was a dark lord of the Sith, so powerful and so wise, he could use the Force to influence the midi-chlorians to create life.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So episode 6 of The Acolyte revealed a major pattern with regards to the actions and motives of our central characters and how the story could eventually wrap up, and it's a potentially huge ending. Including lightsaber whip scars from a former master, Qimir's real identity, plus Sol and May to take the fall for everything.
They were all killed by a lightsaber. What does that tell you?
As mentioned up top, with the pattern of reveals laid out in this episode, there's only one place to start, and that is with Vernestra. Since the show began, huge suspicions and questions have been raised around Vernestra. She's been extremely set on keeping the deaths of Indara and Torbin very quiet, using the political landscape as a cover for what's really going on.
If it were to become public that a former Jedi killed one of our own,
our political enemies could use it against us.
discretion is important.
By the time the events of episode 6 unfold, it's no accident that Qimir's scars and Vernestra's lightsaber whip are revealed in the same episode. Why? Well, my theory is that Qimir is the former discarded Padawan of Vernestra.
The Jedi teach there's only one way to access the Force, and if you don't do it their way, it fades.
This theory makes perfect sense when you consider not only the timing of the whip reveal and Qimir's scars, but also the fact that she's trying to cover up the actual truth.
Something to tip the scales.
In addition, prior to episode 6, Vernestra had only been seen on Coruscant, but with the news of the Jedi being killed on Kofar, she was very quick to make a move to the planet. Now this sounds like someone who is in a hurry to determine the cause, who is behind the killings, and how best to cover her tracks. When Vernestra reaches Kofar, she'll likely be able to determine from the wounds or by using the Force who or what killed the Jedi. Now interestingly, Vernestra talks of tipping the scales.
Something to tip the scales.
And this plays nicely into the wider Star Wars story, with Plagueis and Palpatine manipulating the Force to create life, and the Force hitting back by creating Anakin as a way to balance the scales. But back to the theory of Vernestra being the former master of Qimir, I found it very suspicious seeing how intent Vernestra was to recover the bodies as quickly as possible, and prepare them for a burial.
It's time to get back to the ship. We should prepare these bodies for burial.
I'm not sure how DNA testing worked a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, but if it's anything like here on Earth, hiding or tampering with evidence is typically a sign of guilt or a part to play in the crime. Now, another hint of Vernestra's dark past is the colour of her lightsaber. Now, most people understand the bleeding process that needs to take place in order to create a purple lightsaber. You take a bit of rage and you take a bit of hate, etc., and you add it to the kyber crystal as you're bleeding it. But it's an interesting choice of colour to give Vernestra's lightsaber, if not somehow implicit in the events that took place on Brendock, the Jedi murders on Kofar, and Qimir's dark past. Which leads us perfectly onto theory number 2. Now, in the events that took place during episode 5, Qimir was revealed as the main villain in the story. Following his reveal in episode 5, big questions still remained, and in episode 6, Qimir's true identity and background came to the forefront of everyone's minds. Especially when Qimir let slip he was in fact a former Jedi, just as Osha was. Now, there's been some huge theories centered around the identity of Qimir, and in episode 6, fans have speculated that Qimir could be the Sith Master, Darth Plagueis. The Cortosis Easter egg in the cave was an interesting link to the Darth Plagueis book, and could be the first instance of the show unveiling Qimir as Plagueis. If true, this would mean Plagueis transferred his essence to Qimir, the same way in which Palpatine had done in the sequels, but firstly spoke of in the prequels. But for me, it now seems even more likely to theorise that Qimir is the former Padawan of Vernestra. The pattern in both his and Vernestra's actions speak volumes, as does the timing of both the lightsaber whip and scars reveal in episode 6. Now, not to excuse Qimir's actions in episode 5, but it was also interesting to see how he allowed Osha to walk freely around the location where they escaped to. Where in contrast, Sol locked May up at the end of the episode as soon as his mind was clear and he could see that it was May. Now, does this speak to Qimir's past, some potential sliver of good in him, and potentially him acting on revenge and pain, rather than an inherent dark side tendency? To cap off theory number 2, episode 6 leaves us wondering if Qimir is either a Sith Lord, the apprentice of a Sith Lord, or a rogue dark side Force user seeking an apprentice of his own, to carry out the rule of 2. Seeing as Qimir was discarded by Vernestra, he's likely a rogue Sith or dark side Force user in my eyes. He's working in the shadows in order to acquire an Acolyte and carry out his revenge on the Jedi, but most importantly, Vernestra. Targeting May and Osha is no coincidence either. As a former Jedi Padawan and knowing what likely happened on Brendock from the Jedi archives, Qimir likely took this knowledge with him and seeked out both May and Osha as his Acolyte and their shared desire for revenge on the Jedi. Moving on to our central Jedi in this story, and Sol has had a rather tumultuous time these past few episodes. But has his past finally caught up on him? Theory number 3 surrounds Sol's past, present and future. Now, if we look at this as a kind of timeline, firstly, Vernestra discarded Qimir as her Padawan, but not before whipping him with her lightsaber, likely as punishment for not following orders or something similar. This is very unlike the Jedi, but let's see where the story leads. Sol then carried out the yet unrevealed events on Brendock. Following Brendock, May disappears only to seek revenge on the Jedi, whereas Osha joins the Jedi as Sol's Padawan. And now all paths converge. Qimir and May are still seeking revenge. Just like her sister, Osha is now being manipulated by Qimir, and Vernestra is covering her past.
It's time to get back to the ship.
We should prepare these bodies for burial.
And the consequential actions of Qimir. This leaves Sol, who I suspect is going to take the fall for everything. It's a wild theory, but hear me out. With Sol and May placed together in a cruel twist of events, Vernestra will likely use them both as the cover-up, blaming the events in the show on them both, and reporting as much to Ki-Adi-Mundi, and in turn, the Jedi Council.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
When all is said and done and the series credits roll, Sol's actions on Brendock may leave little room for sympathy from the audience. But this theory certainly unravels a cruel and twisted pattern of motives and cover-ups from all concerned. So is Qimir the former Padawan of Vernestra? Is Sol likely to be the fall guy? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for all our Star Wars adventures, and as always, may the Force be with you.